I'm going to thank you for coming in today to talk to us. We have shared a hell of a run in the last 3 or 4 years. Very interesting use case for building a platform and developing a high-powered growth engine, and the importance of the IT leg in that journey from a M&A standpoint and value creation standpoint. So I appreciate Robert coming in today, Sheesley, CIO of Wrench Group, technically.
Group, yep.
Started as an InvestCorp investment,
yep.
And through much of the efforts of what Robert did and designed out of the gate, hopefully with a little of our help, that they were able to have a successful exit very quickly, and in terms of M&A timing, and now you're with Leonard Green putting on the accelerator. So thanks for coming in today. I appreciate the time.
It's great to be here, Jeff. Appreciate the invitation.
So I wanted to kind of walk through just the whole deal thesis that started originally, and talk through the journey of how you've had to shift, your mindset, your priorities and role, growing from what really was a very small mom and pop organization of I forget what size, 100 people maybe out of the gate.
Yeah, we had 4 brands, probably 100, 200 people. When I joined as a consultant.
That's right.
And with our friend Damien.
Yeah, that's right.
And it evolved into this CIO role, which I hadn't been expecting. But when it was presented to me, and I understood what the vision and the plan was, it was kind of a no-brainer to join the organization. Ken Haynes is. Vision for the organization has come to fruition tenfold.
He's brilliant.
Yeah, he's got a great business mind, and he puts the right people in positions for us to accelerate and be successful. The whole thesis behind Wrench Group was find good companies that have had a history of success, some sort of trend of growth, not necessarily dramatic or exponential, but a steady series of growth throughout their history, and then talk with them about how we apply our shared services model, and in particular the IT and systems and infrastructure that RKON helps us with, to their organization, so that they don't have to worry about those sorts of things, right? They don't have to worry about the cybersecurity protection, the endpoint protection, And because we're helping them do that, because we're bringing talent, good partners like RKON to the table to help us put all the pieces in place so that they can focus on their core competencies, which really is serving the homeowner.
Yeah.
HVAC, electrical, plumbing,
right.
Water purification. So that's the core competency of these organizations. And our goal as a shared services layer in Wrench Corporate is to take that heavy lifting with F&A and IT and marketing, and not necessarily tell them what to do because they've been successful, but help guide them to the next level. It's the whole what got you here is not going to get you there philosophy.
Right. Yep.
I routinely, when I go to new acquisitions and talk about what we do as an IT organization from an infrastructure perspective, systems, computing platforms perspective, I mention a few things. It's the think globally, act locally, and do no harm. We're here to do no harm. If we're not making you better, if we're creating disruption in your operations, that's not good for anybody. So we are pragmatic about how we approach it. We typically have a timetable, especially in the infrastructure, in the multi-factor authentication rollout, the M365, which you all help us with. But the other pieces of that, we move at the pace that they feel most comfortable with.
Yeah.
Some of our acquisitions are like, hey, let's go. We're ready. Let's do it. Others are like, can you leave us alone for about 6 months before we have this conversation about migrating to this platform called, Service Titan and Intact, which is our integrated operating system, F&A system.
And so at this point, how big is the organization? How many acquisitions and how big, what's the footprint?
So, we're at 26 brands.
That's amazing.
Yes, it's been quite a
So there
ride.
was 26 acquisitions.
Yeah, well, we started with 4, so there was, so some of the acquisitions came with multiple brands.
Yes, that's right.
So we've probably had about 18 acquisitions
Okay.
since I joined, because some of those acquisitions had multiple brands come with. And, we're a little over 6,000 people now.
Wow.
We've cleared the hurdle of, we will clear the hurdle of $1 billion in revenue. And so we're growing acquisitively and organically. Our newest, one of our newest brands in Charlotte, Morris Jenkins, broke their monthly revenue record in May, and then broke their May record in June, and then broke their June record in July. And they are a fixture in that community, and they provide quality home services to the homeowner, and their repeat customer KPI is phenomenal.
Yeah, that's awesome. What a great success story, and the speed this has happened at too. Mm-hmm. I mean, what's your pace of acquisition at this point?
I think up until this year we were probably doing about four a year.
Okay.
And this year we've locked in 2 that we've inked and have joined the Wrench Group family. There's a likelihood that there'll be a 3rd this year.
Yeah.
And we're not slowing down because we don't want to acquire the kinds of organizations that are part of the family already. But there's a lot going on in our world, not just from an operational perspective, but from an IT perspective. We're onboarding, I call it the Mac Daddy MarTech stack, that I continue to remind my partner in crime, Megan McNally, our Chief Marketing Officer, who's been a godsend when she showed up 6 months after I did. We've been aligned pretty much the entire way on our digital transformation strategy and roadmap.
Which is fascinating. We definitely want to spend some time talking about the partnership between IT and the CMO office.
It's one like I've not seen in the past, and our teams are extremely collaborative together. Megan and I kind of set the agenda and the climate, if you will, and then we hired some incredibly talented people to do a lot of the heavy lifting. Some pretty strong technical minds and practitioners.
Yeah.
And it's been a wonderful partnership between IT and marketing at Wrench Group. So we're onboarding our acquisitions onto our Adobe platform, and it's their Adobe Cloud system, Campaign, Analytics, Target, and we've been successful at rolling out website refreshes over the course of the last 2 years, and hope to complete that by the end of next year. And it's been a good couple of years. I can't complain.
The results have been astounding, and obviously we're in the M&A business too, supporting that function. Mm-hmm. You have been forever. Mm-hmm. Rarely do you see somebody pull off at this level success so consistently. Mm-hmm. Everything you guys have done has touched, really turned to gold for the most part. And made it look easy. And we know it's know it's not easy.
I routinely read a lot of blog posts. TheMiddleMarket.com is a favorite of mine. And I've seen so many senior level private equity founders and managing partners make mention of the importance of data and the digitalization of operations, right? In fact, I just read recently, it was one of the founding partners of Oak Hill Capital, Jay Taylor Crandall, I think his name is. He made mention that as he reflects back on history, historically the data wasn't available.
That's right.
Now, there's some truth to that. It's probably not that it wasn't available. It was there.
Difficult to get to.
Right. We didn't build portals or channels to get it, and we didn't create data from data. Now we're creating data from data, right?
That's right.
So with artificial intelligence and machine learning, we're creating insights as a result of the relationships of all of these data elements. Yeah. So our our thing is, and what we've been looking at doing and are doing since we launched our digital transformation strategy in January 2019 is, creating wisdom from knowledge, from information, from data.
Right.
And we've made a lot of success. We've had a lot of success in doing that throughout the last couple of years through the platforms that we've implemented, like Adobe, Azure, and our data lake and analytics platform,
right.
Databricks. And so we are actually doing what we sought out to do back in January 19, and that is, creating knowledge from information from, the data that we have available.
Yeah.
And, I always hear from our board and our my C-level colleagues, you got to keep it simple, right? Because the acquired companies, this is kind of new to them, this whole idea of data, information, knowledge, wisdom. And the messaging can certainly be simple. I can message simple. Behind the scenes, and
it's rocket science.
Yes, data normalization and cleansing, bronze, silver, gold, to get to a data schematic or a data pool, if you will, lake. Estate is the new term, right? Data estate. To get to that is not an easy endeavor.
No.
But we've got good people and support of the C-suite and the board to bring our data to life, if you will, and create these insights that allow our operators to make not only monthly decisions, but weekly and daily decisions to pivot as necessary.
How much do you think, what you're doing is making a difference with certainly getting the market to you, right? Mm-hmm. Bringing the market, especially in developing areas. How much is it that, or is it offering, like what to offer or what to promote? Where's the magic coming from that your CMO is really targeting?
So I think one of the things that we've been pretty successful at is identifying who our top X number of customers are in certain trades. Meaning we've got, this is what the top customer looks like from a data profile in terms of, engagement and transactions on the HVAC side, on the plumbing side, on the electrical side. I mean, ultimately we want to be able to offer, we do offer all of those trades in most of our brands, but we want customers to, we want our electrical customers to buy our plumbing services and our plumbing customers to buy our HVAC services. And, we have mined that data and created hypotheses around who are our best customers. Are they people born on Tuesday with purple hair? That's the analogy that I use, and I think it's been reused by many in the organization. So, we're looking for people that were born on Tuesday and have purple hair because they have bought 3 trades from us. And oh, by the way, they just bought memberships, as well. And so we want to be able to target those folks with the things that we do. They may not even know we have plumbing services.
That's right.
They just know that their air conditioner went out. It was 110 degrees and they needed someone fast.
That's right.
And so they called us, and hopefully we did a good job for them so that when they hear about our plumbing services or our electrical service and that need surfaces for them, they think of Morris Jenkins or Coolray in Atlanta or Parker & Sons in Phoenix. I
was so impressed when we talked about the strength of your relationship with your CMO. Mm-hmm. This is like your partner, essentially, in the business, which everybody consulting has drawn this out forever. Very few have gotten to the point. And it struck me, just even how you got in this position, because there's 2 things that need to happen to get in that position. One, you have to have an out-of-the-box IT thinker. And I want to go into your background because you're not exactly from IT. You're from the consulting background, born with that. But the other thing is you have to operationalize and create scalability and repeatability within your program and your model so that it's not a distraction. It's a Maslow's hierarchy theory. And you had kind of broken down, I hadn't heard this before, but your 4 phases. And I thought that was fascinating. I want to get into that in a minute. But can you talk a little bit, can we go on the Wayback Machine and talk about consulting, how you got into M&A and what your early experience was with that, because it's a really cool story.
Yeah, like I said, I joined Electronic Data Systems because I thought this guy named Ross Perot was, an incredible leader. You know, you can argue that he created the outsourcing industry when he left IBM and created.
He absolutely created it. Yeah, and IBM stole it back from him and tried to duplicate it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, what's the best form of flattery is imitation, right?
That's right.
And so I joined EDS because of Ross Perot, not because I had this crazy, wild passion to program in COBOL and assembler and JCL. And yes, I'm dating myself. But I did do some Power Builder coding once upon a time.
See, there you go.
Yeah, so step into the 90s. I joined EDS, and that was really the foundation of my technical knowledge and interest in technology.
Yep.
And then leaving EDS after 7 years was not an easy decision, but Andersen Consulting came knocking more than once. And I joined Andersen Consulting. And actually, I joined Andersen Consulting. The plan for me was to be the manager of the SAP Center of Excellence, which was a joint partnership between Andersen Consulting and General Motors. Because I was living in Michigan.
Oh, okay.
The talks fell through. They couldn't get to the goal line or the end zone with the partnership. And so, you know, I think, Bob, I can't remember the partner at the time in Detroit. He's like, well, what are we going to do with this guy we just brought in from EDS? And they sent me on an M&A. It was Frontier Communications had acquired all those small telecom companies.
Yes.
So they sent me over there in South something, Michigan, outside of Detroit. And I basically led the PMO for the roll-up of all of those acquired companies. And that's where I cut my teeth, and I've never looked back.
Yeah.
You know, following Andersen, I had that very short cup of coffee with March 1st, which lasted about a year.
Till they exploded in 01 or
March of 01 or April of 01.
I remember it well. Chicago based and
it's that was fun. I can't believe no one has written a book about that.
I can't either.
I thought of a great title, right?
What?
March 1st, think second. Or think first. I don't know.
There's something good in there.
Yeah. But, I've got lifelong friends that I met while I was at March 1st.
Great people there.
Yeah. And then I went into corporate and spent 4 years at CNA, a director in their IT organization. And I just went back into consulting, Alvarez and Marcel, West Monroe Partners.
That's right.
And then on my own in partnership with Damien.
Yep.
The majority of my career has been M&A, due diligence, and post-deal integration.
Yeah. It's been, we kind of stumbled into it as well, and Damien, I think, had something to do with that. So we accidentally did a big carve-out, and they said, hey, you did that pretty good. Help us with another one. And Alvarez and Marcel became a big partner and stuff. So I agree with you. Once you discover it's like a really cool, fast-moving business, and if you have the right type of mindset, you're going to stand above the crowd, and it's not an easy thing to do, but, you know. So good.
And the expectations were high, and they still are high. But once you've been through a dozen of them or more, you don't get unnerved by much.
That's the big thing. You expect to make good decisions while getting shot at continually.
Yes.
Then you're fine.
Yes. That's a good analogy.
You know, I wanted to talk a little bit about how you got started with Wrench, because you actually started as an interim M&A consultant to actually help them get this off the ground and get started, and it was just supposed to be a 100-day plan. And so maybe talk a little bit about what your original goals, how you were brought in, and how you ended up staying for the whole show.
Absolutely, yeah. I think I mentioned I had just left Mylan. I was leading enterprise architecture for Mylan Pharmaceuticals. We had a regime change, and a lot of people actually ended up leaving. I was somewhere in the middle of that whole exodus, if you will. And I just jumped back into the M&A space and started working with Damien, was working with a food processing company up in Minneapolis. And Damien said, hey, can you come down to Atlanta, help us with this software evaluation and selection, because I've done that quite often in my career when Damien and I were at Alvarez together and when I was at Andersen Consulting. So I spent a few weeks with Damien and the Wrench team down in Atlanta. evaluating platforms, ServiceTitan Field Edge. We looked at a few M&A systems. I helped them create scorecards. They made a selection, and I went away. Went back to my my M&A job up in Minneapolis.
And they were small at this time, right? This was InvestCorp's first.
Yeah, I think they
first
may have
footprint.
They may have been 3 brands at the time.
Yeah,
it may have been. I think it was pre-acquisition of Berkey's in Dallas.
Yes,
and Damien called me a few months later and said, "Hey, I've got these guys, kind of positioned to execute this infrastructure in a cloud platform with RKON."
That's right. Yep.
And someone needs to help them migrate to these new systems that you helped us select.
Yeah.
Can you come down here and help them do that? And I said, well, I've got some things I got to tie up in Minneapolis, but I think I can free myself up, come down a couple of days starting in November. This was 2017. And that evolved. I created a runway methodology, if you will, which were pieces and parts of previous methodologies that I had built and used at other places in my career to migrate their acquired companies onto this new operating platform, this new F&A platform. And the mid-market is a wonderful place to execute M&A on the due diligence side, and it's exciting, and on the post-deal integration side. However, you need to understand, and I know you do, but the systems often are not terribly mature.
That's right.
Especially at the price points, a lot of the PE companies are looking to onboard computing platforms. And so, because of that lack of maturity, so when we started to partner with, as an example, ServiceTitan, they were a relatively new organization.
That's right.
Their platform was, had a lot of potential, right? They were creating integration frameworks with an F&A system that Sage bought called Intact. Not all the bugs were worked out. So we had some rough dirt road trips in early 2018 with them. Yes. And ultimately, as we, you talked about the 4 phases: stabilize, optimize, transform, and disrupt. And that's always kind of been my plan. When I was first onboarded as the CIO, I described the technology evolution at Wrench Group in that way with our CEO, Ken Haynes, and others in the C-suite, and it seemed to resonate with them on what I was talking about. Fast forward 6 months after I joined as CIO, here comes Megan McNally, the Chief Marketing Officer, and I'm like, that's wonderful. We probably need someone to, lead marketing. Yeah. But we just...
Yeah, marketing's a good thing. We need some of that.
Yeah, we should do that.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
Yeah, that's a good tier 2 competency for the organization. Just kidding.
Yes, the sarcasm's coming through because we know how incredible she is.
She and I clicked. We started to talk about this idea of digital transformation, right? And I explained to her the premise behind the onboarding of the acquired companies onto the new computing platforms: stabilize first, optimize later. Right?
Yes.
We got to get through the stabilization period, and the optimization period will come as we stabilize these acquired companies who haven't had very sophisticated or mature systems.
Right.
A lot of them were...
It's the hallmark of the mid-market,
Indeed.
Right? They've bootstrapped their way to a certain level, and their systems are usually undermanned, underserved, and they're doing it off of gut. And,
If we encountered an acquired company that was actually running QuickBooks, that was... we smiled because they weren't running their F&A on Microsoft Excel. Right. And no discredit to any of them. They've been wonderful acquisition partners. But at the end of the day, a lot of them were mom and pop organizations that, like I said, did not have mature, sophisticated platforms.
Well, and I think a lot of people overlook what the value prop is of from private equity to the business owners. I'm a business owner, and the value prop they bring to the table is creating some scalable system that allows me to monetize what I've learned and know. What these business owners do is irreplaceable. But if you can help them monetize and create scalability in that, you supercharge their efforts. So there's if they already had that figured out, there'd be no reason for them to do the merger. So those are good synergistic, elements to be present on both sides.
Absolutely. The analogy I use is, racing, car racing, right? You want to get into the pit, have the tires changed, and other things done as quickly as possible so you can get back on the track.
That's right.
And so let's break this down to RKON, right?
Yep.
You provide Tier 1 help desk services to all of our brands, all of our acquired companies. If we can shave off X number of hours or days or whatever that might be on how long a ticket lives, right? It's that time to remediate, right? Time to respond and time to remediate. If we can start to shave off that time, that gets the driver back on the track quicker, right?
Yes.
And that's money. I mean, that's the more people we have in the field, the more people we have dispatching, the more people we have answering phones.
Yep.
To the degree, we've rolled out an online scheduling tool, which has really been very impactful in our ability to provide our customers a new channel to schedule appointments without even actually talking to someone.
Yeah.
And so that is meaningful.
Yeah.
When you start to add those minutes and hours up, it translates into value, right? And I remember years ago when I was at CNA here in Chicago, I ran the Six Sigma organization.
No kidding?
Yes.
No, I didn't know that.
And right? Walter Mitty. So I ran the Six Sigma organization, and we used to do these, launch these exercises called snapshot sampling, where we would interview workers in the office about what they were doing. They had a list of 200 activities they could choose from, and we would plot the amount of time that was spent over the course of a week or 2 weeks, and we bell curve it, right? And we could see how much time was spent on low value activities versus high value activities. And so we always sought to implement process change, sometimes through automation, to move the needle on that and give them more time back to do high value activities and less low value activities like faxing medical reports or police reports or whatever that might be.
When you go through, that's a great story. And when you go through that process, what we ended up doing together was creating a scalable platform.
Absolutely.
One that there were, everybody would have to give up a little control in trade for allowing them to move upstream. Yep. And if you bought right, there was plenty of room. You bought the right talent to move upstream to capture that value, while they had to trade giving up maybe a little control, which is really a story around creating a platform, a scalable platform in the M&A business,
it is,
right?
Yeah. The cultural synergy or the cultural assimilation of the acquired company into the larger organization is extremely important. They have to buy into this idea of this scalable infrastructure.
Yes.
And if you think about, all of the areas, we've got 7 competencies, right? Infrastructure being one of them. Infrastructure, M&A, business applications, information management, process, architecture, and did I miss one? I missed one. Cybersecurity.
Yes, I was just
don't forget about that. And so we've got all of these competency groups, and RKON plays a large role in our infrastructure competency area and our risk or cybersecurity area. But if you can, we've managed to kind of build patterns of onboarding our integrated companies into our computing platforms and infrastructure as a service.
You've got this down to a very repeatable, predictable methodology. It's that, new company buy playbook. It's amazing to watch, and we're to a certain extent part of it. But it's still cool to watch.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest challenge, we talked about challenges when we talked before we sat down today. One of the biggest challenges is the paradigm shift of the acquired leadership, right?
That's right.
But if you do your due diligence on the cultural assessment and cultural synergy and what the assimilation looks like, you can plant seeds along the way, even as early as due diligence on what is to come.
That's right.
Again, we always lead with do no harm, think globally, act locally, right? We want to think globally, but we don't want to disrupt the autonomy that the brand has, their secret sauce, which has made them successful up until the point of acquisition.
Yeah.
We want to really create an exponential run for them by taking some of the pressure of cybersecurity, infrastructure management, tier one help desk management, all of that away from them, give it to us, and work with us on implementing it.
How difficult, it's not just a shift from these companies, it's a shift in IT thinking. There's a real balance between, do no harm and allowing the newly acquired firm to set the timeline, right? Yep. It's one of the keys to your success was your ability to consolidate. I think it was 7 or 8 purchases out of the gate. Yep. Consolidate those in just a couple of years and get them up and running, reduce their operational costs, kind of prepare this thing for the next level. That really required everybody to play ball, and I see from our standpoint roll-ups that struggle, and they always struggle because they've delayed integration for a variety of reasons. Often it's political appeasement of the portfolio companies. Oh, it's not the right time. We've got to. How in the world? What are the keys to that that you could tell like those that haven't gone down this road, especially from an IT standpoint?
I mean, I think a lot of it had to do with Ken Haynes' leadership. I mean, Ken is a veteran in the home services industry. He's seen what works and he's seen what doesn't work. And together, he and I and our COO, Paul Smith, and Megan McNally, who came from AGCO, into our corporate marketing leadership role, we've worked very closely together at building this methodology, right? This pattern of successive integration.
Yeah.
If you look at all the work that needs to be done in those competency areas that I described, and I'm adding enterprise architecture this year as an 8th competency. If you look at all of the work that needs to be done, it is like a 24-month endeavor.
That's right.
But you can bite. What's that old saying? You got to eat the elephant one bite at a time. Well, sometimes we take 2 bites at a time.
Yeah.
Right. And we've got parallel teams working together. So, like as an example, our process harmonization, our process architecture team works in parallel with our business applications and M&A teams. So that when we roll these applications out, when we convert the acquisitions onto the new computing platforms, we're not just, moving the data into the new platform and providing some training on how to use it. We're looking at process harmonization too.
Yeah.
Because we feel that we've created a lot of best practices in Wrench Group that will be advantageous for the new acquisition to consider adopting.
That's right.
We don't say you have to adopt it, but we show the success and the KPIs of some of our other acquisitions, our other locations, and the value prop is we can get you there too if you want us to help you get there.
Well, you had an incredible track record of institutionalizing key processes in that system to create those efficiencies, which drove value creation, allowed an early exit. Selling that as, if I'm an acquiree, and I believe in what I do, I want to be part of that because I know that organically I'll probably grow double if you can just, take the things that we're trying to figure out along the way, which is really the barrier to growing a business. Half it's money, the other half is wasting it on the wrong things. You have to learn your lessons. You guys are bringing that best practices, essentially roll-up model in the industry at all. And IT is often the long pole in the tent. I think that people underestimate. They think that one's lagging behind, but you're in the home services business. On the surface, it would not appear to be, well, how important IT is it, right? But, the cab companies found out the hard way that what a good IT platform, portable platform can do in terms of disruption. I definitely want to get to that. But can you talk through what the early challenges were trying to create that initial footprint and how, what was the next phase and how did you have to shift your approach? Because I think there's a lot of IT leaders out there that haven't gone through the journey that you've gone through. What would you tell them are the keys to think about?
I think one of the things we did early on after that first one or two acquisition movement to the new computing platform is we made an investment in enterprise information management. And so we recognized that at the end of the day, getting things done using a new computing platform is wonderful, especially if there's workflow automation, right? Yeah. You're taking away some of the paper-based activities and tasks, and you're automating that, creates efficiencies. But the real value, and you see this in some of the blog postings and the interviews of some of the senior level founding partners of private equity firms that have an appreciation for how technology can drive exponential growth. The real benefit is the data to information to knowledge.
That's right.
And so we rolled out this enterprise information management program, and our goals initially was to get to a level of data normalization that we could compare 8 key performance indicators across all of our brands. So the magic number was 8. And once we solved for that, and once we were successful at that, we started to look at other leading indicators, right? Because you always start with the lagging indicators. Right. It's compound annual growth rate and EBITDA.
What just happened?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Let's look in the rearview mirror and see what happened. Then we moved toward those leading indicators that produce the results that you're measuring with your lagging indicators.
And that's where the art form comes
Indeed.
in. What about this?
Yep.
Can we gather data on this? What would you do with it if you did?
And I will say that we probably our goals were probably more lofty than they needed to be out of the gate. Even I think it was the second year that Megan and I were working together on all of this, our digital transformation. And we're like, let's go out and get a machine learning engine. That's what we need. I think, let's do that. So we did. And it was one of those, I liken it to that scene in Back to the Future when Marty McFly starts to do some Jimi Hendrix on the stage, and he looks up and the entire audience is looking at him like he's got 3 heads, and he says, "Oh, I guess you're not ready for that yet."
That's right.
And that was us in machine learning.
That's amazing, though, to make that mistake and say not yet and move past it.
We did.
That I'm impressed with, just the ability to handle, stretch too far and back it down.
I think Megan would admit with me that we were a little over our skis there.
But thank God, if you don't walk into, change and disruption and transformation with the mindset of stretching, you're never going to find out what the limits are.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. You gotta throw your line in the creek or the pond if you're going to catch some fish.
Yeah. So what do you think the big mistakes are that IT leaders have when I see a lot of them, they'll buy half dozen companies and they'll be like, well, we're going to hold off on doing the consolidation. And, what we see is, fractured decision making. Obviously, they lack the synergistic, but they also lack consolidated data that leads to this whole transformation and disruption. So that phase gets pushed maybe indefinitely, right? If you don't consolidate your data, at least you've got no starting point for that. Yeah. And then they also tend to have high operational costs because they have a lot of one-off solutions. So they don't grab that synergy. They just stall out, and the deal thesis often stalls out. What is it? How did you guys avoid that? And what's in there? It's not an easy thing to put your finger on.
So I was, as you know, I was just out of Black Hat in Las Vegas with some of your folks even. Chris and Jeff and
were they behaving?
Chris and Ryan behaved. We probably should talk about Jeff.
Yeah.
I'm kidding. But no, it was a great trip. Chris did a wonderful job presenting to the portfolio companies.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I forgot about that.
But I actually had dinner with one of the portfolio company.
Did he do that with Leonard Green?
He did. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting him do that.
Yeah.
That's nice.
It was a wonderful presentation. I think they gave the audience a lot to think about.
Yeah.
But I was talking to someone else from another organization that has a similar mindset as we do with acquisitions, not a Leonard Green and Partner portfolio company, but he's new to the role. He was onboarded as the CISO about 6 months ago, and he was lamenting about all of the fragmentation and the disparate systems and the heterogeneous technology ecosystem. You can't get to this place called optimization and disruption,
which is phase 2 for you.
Yes,
Yep.
when you have that, because
That's right.
just talk about data normalization. Can you with rubber bands and paper clips get to the end result of a comparison of metrics? Yes, you can, but there's a lot more sweat equity that goes into that for a long time versus initially by moving people to the same platforms. And I'm not saying you have to do that with every business unit or every functional area,
right?
But those areas that create and enrich your customer data and financials are pretty important to look at in a very homogeneous way, to do some comparisons. Plus, it doesn't allow you, or it makes it a lot more difficult to execute on this idea of best practices, right?
Yes.
Impossible. Assuming that your acquired companies are in the same business, HVAC, plumbing, electrical, you want a relative view of comparison of how we're doing, and you want to see who's doing X really, really well, and ask the question, why are they doing that so well? Why are their results so much greater than the others? Oh, because this is a best practice that they've implemented, and that's the catalyst to the better results. And then you want to be able to offer that best practice to the other brands, the other locations, to adopt. We're seeing that now with some of our newer acquisitions.
That's right. Because they're in those early phases of stabilization and now optimization, even though the entire organization is.
Yeah, everyone's kind of in a different piece of the life cycle.
Yeah. And so obviously going into that, you need management commitment to create a platform. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't call you just an IT leader. You're a process leader. You're a business guy. You're a consultant. I mean, IT happens to be the lever you pull on. But having a strong IT leader that understands the importance of creating that scalable platform and a vision of when to invest in the next thing. That's the hard thing. It's never business as usual. You always have to have a vision for what's next. I also wondered, just talking with you the other day, how important the CMO role that can take that and show results from it is to really, it almost seems like all three are pretty important to get the newcos on the platform to adopt and essentially have faith to dive in, right? Because that ultimately they're either rowing with you or against you.
I would say that's probably an area that I get most excited about is the use cases that we have stood up, we are standing up, and that we have yet to stand up in the marketing area. The whole idea of A/B testing in the campaign management space. A lot of these organizations, made the right plays with media, television, radio, whatever. The game is changing. There are more organizations like us that are doing some of the things that we're doing. I would submit that we're probably a little bit more ahead of many, if not all, of our competitors on what we're doing with data and information. Our data lake and analytical platform that we've made some investment in, and we've got some talented people doing some good work. Is fueling our Adobe platform with data, not just from our operating system, but from other orbiting systems that touch the customer in some way. So we're able to bring all of this data together, go through a bronze, silver, gold enrichment process, the normalization, so that we have more homogeneous data across all of our locations than heterogeneous. And then we can then conduct these A/B tests. And if we're doing it for one location and there's a certain campaign that is just driving membership off the charts, we want to bring that to our other locations to A/B test to see if it works in that market.
Interesting. How, when were you conscious about going from post-optimization into transformation, and then this whole disruption? I mean, that's where you guys are now. You're on the brink of potentially disrupting this industry through data analytics and what you're doing from a marketing and customer acquisition standpoint.
We are.
Did that just, it's going to be cool to see what happens in the next, few years, mm-hmm. but, did the opportunity to be in that role just appear because you had gotten the foundation right, and were you conscious about going through those phases, or did they just kind of become apparent as you were exiting them?
I was conscious of getting through transformation, and I think Megan was as well, which is why we kicked off our digital transformation strategy in January 2019. We had some help. We brought in some external party consulting organization to assist us with kind of getting our thoughts around not necessarily this idea of transformation in the home services industry, but looking at transformation in other industries and what has worked in B2C and what has not worked. Because I learned a long time ago when I started to cut my teeth in M&A at Anderson Consulting, and we took the model that we used at Nations Bank, we lifted that M&A methodology model, and we brought it to HCSC right down the road when we merged Blue Cross Blue Shield of Illinois and Texas.
Yes.
And so we used an industry model that banking made successful and lifted it, brought it into the healthcare space, tweaked it because it's not a one-to-one match. Right. And it was highly successful for Illinois because they acquired Texas, then New Mexico, then Oklahoma, and other blue brands.
Your first big platform.
It was. Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, I'd never heard that story before.
Blue Chip. Blue Chip was the system that we were migrating everyone to.
Interesting.
It goes back quite a ways. But I think that, Megan and I, and that's the other thing we talked about, the marketing and technology partnership. I mean, luckily we're two leaders that have a history of checking our egos at the door.
Yep.
At the end of the day, if she is not successful with her goals, I can't count my goals as being achieved, because a lot of what she needs from IT comes from our organization, comes from IT, right?
That's right.
And so we're in this together, and I'm optimistic that we're going to get through disruption together. We've got a lot of work to do still. We're not slowing down.
Yeah, no, you're not.
And we've been highly successful. Again, we've got Ken Haynes, Paul Smith as our COO, Scott Cannell as our CFO. We've got a great C-suite team, and we've been very successful at what we call our greenfield plants. That is, looking at a metropolitan area that we don't have a presence in, and taking one of the brands that's closest to that metropolitan area and planting it there as a seed, right? And building. We've done it, in Austin. We've done it in Tucson. We've done it in Orlando. Coming to a city near you.
Yeah.
So it's exciting.
That's great. It's a really cool story. So we were just talking a little bit about the psychology of change and organizational change management, and wrapping around kind of, what type of IT leader do we need to have to begin with to go through this dramatic growth engine? What are the key elements, and how does that tie in, and what are the keys to organizational change management? I think that's been, you guys have a secret sauce there that I can tell you from my standpoint is working extremely well, taking, folks that have been on their own and now they're part of a tribe, and they're rowing with you extremely fast. So you've got a great approach. Yeah. And you dig in a little.
We do, and we have an organizational change management philosophy and approach. We always, it's cliche, and I think Simon Sinek has been quoted, maybe the most quoted business mind in the last decade. But we truly do begin with why. Yeah. Why are we here? Why are we talking about infrastructure in the cloud? Why are we talking about outsourcing help desk, right? That makes people a little bit nervous. We went through it, right?
Absolutely.
And we had to slow walk that, and we had to do some plants. I think Ragsdale was the first one.
Yes.
And our Georgia, Dallas, Georgia location, and we achieved success. And that success, then we took that as evidence for, rolling that out to another location and then another location. But we do try to begin with why. Why are we here? Why are we doing this? Why the homogeneous computing platform? When you take the acquired company leaders through our KPIs and our dashboards and the comparative analytics where we can, and we've actually created, it's been interesting, it was somewhat of a brainchild from our leader in Northern California, Kevin, who's the president of our Service Champions North location. He started this technician competition dashboard, the tech KPIs, right? And it has evolved to an annual event where we celebrate the top 10 or top 15, revenue generating technicians in the company at an annual event, someplace in a celebratory way through awards. And when you show the leadership of the acquired organization what is possible and the why, it's half the battle. It's not the whole battle,
right?
But it's half the battle of this paradigm shift of change.
Painting that clear end vision. Mm-hmm. This is possible. Mm-hmm. We have gotten there. Mm-hmm. You can get there too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a daunting view from their perspective because they've built this company from whatever. Some of them have been there from the beginning.
That's right.
Some of them entered halfway through, but nonetheless, they believe that they have very, we call it the secret sauce, right? They believe they have some pretty institutional capabilities that have made them who they are. We don't want to change any of that.
Right.
We just want to bring automation in. We want to introduce them to new possibilities. As an example, promoting and rolling out the ability of your customer base to schedule appointments online. And if we can do that successfully, if we can have someone pick their phone up and say, I need a repair or some maintenance on my air conditioner or water heater, ding, 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 oh, Thursday at 2 o'clock, I'll take that one, and not have to talk with anybody, and then get, subject to opt-in, opt-out, get an email or a text message saying, thank you for your appointment. Here's your technician that's going to be there on Thursday. This is Joe, and here's Joe's information. Joe's looking forward to seeing you on Thursday at 2 o'clock. And oh, by the way, you can click this link and see where Joe's at on his journey to your house so that he's there on time at 2 o'clock. That is customer experience.
That's awesome. Mm-hmm. And it's not just a matter of imagining and devising those systems. Mm-hmm. It's understanding it from the end user's viewpoint, right, enough to where they adopt it. Because adoption's everything. And I'm sure you've got schools of thought of, my clients will never go for automation. We're not even going to try. This is going to scare them away. We don't want to seem like arm's length. This isn't why they like us. But understanding there's a way to achieve customer intimacy with using automation, and when you marry those two concepts together, it's the most powerful.
Right. The voice of the customer, right?
Yes.
There is a generation, and maybe more than one, that have come after us that don't like to talk on the phone.
That's right.
Right? And
not that there's anything wrong with that.
No, it's not. I mean, it's perspective of convenience, and I can spend my time doing this or that, and why would I pick up the phone and call when I can do this? So I think that there are generations that, this is not a phone, right?
That's right.
It's not. This is a computing device or a social engagement, community, relationship device. And oh, by the way, if I have to, I can talk to someone.
Yeah. Oh, wow, that thing still rings.
Right,
huh?
Right. But and it goes back to the voice of the customer. It's not necessarily what we want as operators there was some philosophy, someone from our location leaders, that they wanted the touch. They wanted the voice to voice. Well, what you want may not necessarily be what the customer wants.
That's right.
So you got to strike a balance.
Yes.
And I think we found it with most of our leadership, and we're optimistic that we'll find it with others.
To me, watching your team, you took a consultative approach, which I think is what makes you different than a lot of IT leaders, that they are trying to create a static, lockdown environment that will be standardized, which is an important first step in this. But you took a consultative approach in that, what do they need? What's next? How do we revolutionize? And this isn't just the end user. Your customer was the next company you bought.
Yeah.
How do I not sell them in a used car way, but how do I convince them that we've got something viable? You put proofs together.
Yep.
You showed them data. Half of your data gathering was to actually prove to the next business leader that you could do what you say about the end user, and you got them to take a leap of faith, not just to merge with the organization, but to take those little incremental steps to adopt the program. And I think that's something that's overlooked a lot.
Yeah, those leading and lagging KPIs, those dashboards, are just the tip of the spear, really.
Yeah.
We are in the process, and I don't even say early stages. We're past the early stage, but when part of my career, I grew up, and I mentioned the Anderson Consulting experience. All of the M&A work that we did was grounded in benefit realization models.
Yep.
Right? There was a hypothesis that stood on the pillars of these business cases. And the business cases had benefit realization models tied to them, where we, made some assumptions along the way, but projected what the value was going to be year 2, year 3, year 4. And in some cases, in the case of ACSC, where there was a charitable organization merging with a nonprofit organization, and so there was some activity with some of the government in Texas about the value of this merger, and we had to prove it out. And we built these benefit realization models to be able to prove it out and track the benefits over time. Now, it's not an exact and perfect science, but Doug Hubbard, who lives up the street here, who wrote, I think he wrote the book "You Can Measure Anything," and I'm paraphrasing.
Yes.
But he's a brilliant mind, and I think he's over in the western suburbs of Chicago. I've met with him numerous times way back when I lived here. You can measure anything if you're willing to make some assumptions about certain conditions and factors and the impact those factors have on an end result. And now we've gotten to a point in our world, we're getting more sophisticated, and we're doing correlations of cause and effect in the marketing world, which is what I mentioned about earlier. I'm so excited about these use cases because we're actually building benefit realization models around these use cases.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of hypothesis and are we tracking a cause or effect?
Yep.
But you have to lay those down, test them, proof them out, deliver a high correlation with some standard KPI, and repeat.
Right, and we're not married to exactness, and we recognize that we will make adjustments along the way. But I think, being able to demonstrate that to potential new acquisitions takes us even further down the road of being more confident of what we can do with a company that is joining us that has had a history of growth, and now this shared services model layered on top to let you do the things that you do well, and that's servicing the homeowner.
Yeah. I think those are great points, and right below that, some of the neat things that I've been able to see your organization go through is not only are you assimilating these new organizations into your plan, and you're not pushing it, like you said, you're being consultative to companies that you now own. Mm-hmm. And I think that nuance is a good lesson to M&A in general. Look, just because you own them, you can't treat them like, they're indentured servants. You still have to treat them like your client. That's why I said the consulting inward, I think, is important. Those lessons have to be extended to the teams that you get. And you've gotten, along the way, you've acquired a lot of IT folks, too.
Yeah.
And you've done a good job of cultivating them into your kind of consultative mindset. I'm just curious. I haven't been privy to those conversations, and what do you tell the some of the younger folks that maybe are part of a small portfolio company, and what kind of mindset are you walking into, and what are you trying to do from a mentorship standpoint?
Well, I think that out of the gate they are. We've had some attrition.
Yes, it's natural.
It's not for everyone.
Not for everybody.
But for those employees that, for lack of a better phrase, we inherited from an acquisition that want career growth, that want to learn, right? This is a great field to learn, because you're now no longer XYZ, or Joe's HVAC company. You're part of a broader organization that's bringing to bear a lot of talent, knowledge, experience. So, the sky's the limit for a lot of the IT employees that come with the acquisitions, if they want that for their careers.
Yeah.
And, we've seen it down in one of our Florida acquired companies. A young man who was in the trades, I want to say he was in plumbing, had an interest in IT. And he was probably the guy that, prior to our acquisition, was troubleshooting, laptops or desktops or even tablets, because he had a technical skill set.
Yeah.
And maybe an uneducated or a non-formally educated skill set.
Like you and I were when we got out of school.
Right.
There's no such thing as IT.
Yeah. After my EDS boot camp, before my EDS boot camp, I didn't know anything. But he, expressed interest in, transitioning to a technology role. He's one of our best field IT people.
Yeah.
And he opened his mind to learning.
Yes.
And there's a lot of people that he can learn from, and I think he's done a wonderful job.
But you culturally were open enough to give these folks a chance to do something that they maybe had never even envisioned they could end up doing.
Yeah, our going in position with respect to talent recruitment and talent onboarding is hire for attitude, train for skill.
Yes.
Now, there are certain roles that you kind of have to walk in the door with some level of skill,
like CFO.
Yeah, that's one of them. But even like our Databricks and data engineers. But just recently, someone I know who just started to dip their toe in the pool of data analytics and data engineering. He's an attorney, and he's much further down the path in his career than many others who come to us for with interest in employment. But I think we're going to either end up onboarding him as a consultant, as a business data analyst, or maybe even a hire, because the attitude is there.
Nice. And
he's walking in the door with some skills that he's learned on his own, but the attitude is aligned with the way we think and the cultural immersion that we're trying to create, not just in IT, but in all of the areas of shared service within Wrench Group.
Yeah, great story. So, big picture, what's possible? What's the end of your rainbow here, this fuzzy, cloudy vision that you're going after?
Well, I think we're certainly going to. I would never want to speak for my boss or really any of my colleagues, but I think we're pretty well aligned. We want to stay the course with finding and onboarding organizations that are like-minded, that have established a pattern of growth, and that want to be part of a bigger landscape of possibility.
Yeah.
I do think in the IT world specifically, the sky's the limit with our data lake and analytics platform. I mean, we'll be knocking on the door of predictive modeling in 2023.
Nice.
We've already started some of that with identifying areas for growth, not in metropolitan areas that we're currently doing business. Megan McNally, our CMO, and her team are working on a lot of very creative campaigns and ways to touch and share with the consumer population who may not be customers of ours, but based on demographics and areas of home ownership, geographically and otherwise, look a lot like our best customers that have joined us in our subscription services, our membership services, and that rely on us to service their home in more than one trade, really.
Wow, that's amazing. You'll have to promise me to do a follow-up with yourself and Megan.
I'm still here.
I'd
love that.
I really want to have a follow-up and talk about the power of information and marketing and the partnership. I think that's coming back from a marketing background, running an IT company, right? I mean, our backgrounds are very similar along those lines. I have a lot of interest and a lot of passion around that, and I think that we could do some cool things there. Well, I got to say, I maybe kind of in closing, I want to thank you for partnering with us along the way. It's been a great journey. The best part for me is watching my people learning right alongside your folks as we're, I feel like we're part of your growth and not to take credit for it, but part of the game that's being played on the field, and it's a lot of fun to watch and be part of, and it's really cool, all the lessons learned coming back, and our folks will come up with ideas and present to you, and they'll be like, by the way, we should do this for other clients. I'm like, yes, let's do that. So I'm seeing a reflection of what you're doing, through my pond as well, and it's really, really cool to watch.
We've had several great partners that are extensions of our IT organization, RKON being one of them. We talked about some of your folks that I will cry if they ever...
Yes, no, don't worry. Me too.
Some of your folks,
I sleep at night knowing you're being taken care of.
Yeah,
so.
They've really become part of our team.
Yeah.
And, the lines are blurred,
That's where it should be.
And so we appreciate the partnership. It's been highly successful, and we definitely are looking forward to continuing it into the future through disruption.
Yes, I can't wait for the disruption part. Then the game really gets fun.
It will.
All right, sounds good. Thanks a lot for coming by today.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it.